Today I realized something about Silco, a tick of his that is completely explained by something that we see in Blisters and Bedrock. If you're wondering why my setup looks a little different today, I'm on the road. I'm at PAX Unplugged. I'm going to be here all weekend, so for the next few days, this is the setup you're going to be seeing. But let's talk about Silco for a moment. Let's talk about the criminal mastermind who is almost never seen with a weapon. Or more specifically, Silco does not engage in violence as often as possible. There are only 3 times we see Silco with a weapon in the entire series. The first 2 are very similar, right? It's when he stabs Vander with the knife both times, and then there is the end of Season 1 where we see him take Jinx's weapon and try to shoot Vi. All 3 of those highly charged situations in which Silco either fears for his life or he fears for something very important to him. Beyond this, Silco goes majorly out of his way to never have any weapons on him. Moreover, he never engages in fights. Now, it's certainly plausible that, violence is beneath him, right? He is a criminal mastermind and he's got muscle to do all the heavy lifting for him. Except, Silco often spends time in situations where having some means of self-defense would certainly benefit him. I think it's far more than just not wanting to engage in the base violence necessary for change. No, I think Silco has a really good reason that he does not want to touch weapons, nor does he want to be the instigator of violence, at the very least by his own hands. Remember in Blisters and Bedrock when we're going through Vander's memories and we see his memory of Silco on the bridge before the fight? Based on the indicators between that moment and also understanding from his note that Vander tried to do what he did to Silco because of what happened to Felicia and Connell, we can conjecture something very apparent. However it happened, which we will never perfectly know, Vander very clearly blames Silco for it. Whether it is because the Molotov that he's holding accidentally ends up on Felicia and Connell, whether or not that is the trigger that gets the enforcers to get Felicia and Connell, whatever it was, Vander blames Silco. And what if I told you we can also extrapolate that Silco blames Silco too? It's the little details, right? Like, remember how I said that Vine never tells Powder it's her fault for the cannery? Silco doesn't ask Vander why he did it. He just says, "You betrayed me." Silco knows exactly why Vander did what he did, and that the only reason he ended up losing any respect for Vander was when Vander made peace with the enforcers. But I think Silco, recognizing his own fault in whatever happened, whether directly or indirectly, made the decision that he was never going to pick up a weapon again. Instead, he did something probably that fit in his ethos a little bit better, but also was maybe more questionable. He turned other people into weapons. Chemtechs, Shimmer Soldiers, Jinx, they all have their own agency in a manner of speaking. And while he has no problem claiming ultimate, overarching responsibility, his own hands almost never get dirty, except when it comes to Vander and Vi. And do remember that at that moment he was terrified of losing Jinx back to Vi, and that Vi he sees as the same type of person as Vander. Someone who betrayed their own sibling, someone who makes friends with enforcers. The only person that Silco will pick up a weapon against are the people that he considers guiltier than himself. If that's not enough emotional damage for you today, don't worry, I've got a little bit more for you. But just a quick note, I am presenting at 2 panels at PAX Unplugged this weekend on Saturday and on Sunday. You can find them in the schedule. But yeah, just check that out. If you're here, I'd love to see you. Say hi. Anyway, back to the emotional damage, right? In going with this theme of Silco doesn't like to use weapons, I conjured what kind of fighting style he would probably have. It would probably be one of evasion, of avoidance, making sure he can stay alive while the people around him clean up the job for him. Silco's pretty lanky, right? I'll bet in his heyday, and we've seen him in his heyday, or at least what he looked like, it's probably reasonable to say that he was fairly fast, right? A speed-based, evasion-heavy fighting style. Does that sound like anybody else? Because consider, there's absolutely zero chance that Jinx learned how to fight from Savika, right? If anything, Savika probably used to teach Vi before she left Vander. But as we see when Jinx tries her hand at the boxing machine, she's actually a pretty poor boxer. She uses her limbs, wild angles, and really odd evasions. Other than her penchant for explosive weaponry and many weapons, I think Jinx fights exactly like her dad. I think Jinx fights like Silco.